On this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse, past guests share their story examples of isolation and control. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. I am Brandon Chadwick, and today we will be sharing 11 story examples from past guests about isolation and control. There is one family instance in these 11, and you'll hear a wide variety of isolation types and reasonings, feelings, etc., that go into the isolation and the manipulations that occur. For some are fear-based tactics. There could be exhaustion, religious aspects are going on. There are a bunch of different ways to accomplish isolation, and hopefully some of these today will validate you and educate you on what to look for. And before we get started today, if you want to be a guest on our Survivor Story episodes, please click on the guest form button at the top of the page at narcissistapocalypse.com. And soon we will be starting a newsletter. So if you want to sign up for a newsletter, go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com. And it's on the front page for signing up for the newsletter. And now I'm going to get out of my way and your way. And here is Isolation and Control, Volume 1.
So in a matter of months, we were engaged. And by that time, I was working for him without pay, believe it or not. But quickly, his job, family, friends became my world. And I started going to his church, which was a huge part of his world. It was a whirlwind. And to be honest, I'm not sure of the progression of how it all went. At times, I was apprehensive, but other times I just rolled with it because it felt so nice to be so wanted and I felt recognized.
I'm completely alone. Now, I don't have not one person to talk to, not one friend to turn to, not one person to spend time with. And so I literally, when he would then start going back to the love bombing and I guess you call it hoovering, I would feel like, wow, he would say that he only has me. And I would feel like, and at this point, I only have him. He loves me and just wants to be with me and wants to be around me and cares to spend time with me and really cares about me.
I went to a public school, but I was for having friends at my public school. My parents highly encouraged us to be friends with other kids in the church. And I did have friends at public school, but I was shamed for it. And I was yelled at and verbally abused for having these friendships. And there was a lot of messaging in our home that what happens in our home stays in our home. We don't talk to other people. Other people won't understand. We were told this. There was a lot of othering in the sense that there was us and them. We in our church and our family were special. We were chosen by God. Everybody else was the other. They were the outside. They were the world. And my parents would say, we live in the world, but we are not of the world.
He got scared when I got too close to other people because I might open up to them and tell them about him or whatever. So he told me one time that this girl was hitting on him at a meeting. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, she said this and this. And I knew she was a little bit raunchy sometimes. And I was like, she's probably just kidding. Like she talks to people like that. It's just who she is. And I wasn't jealous. And he's like, well, I felt disrespected. Like, don't you want to support me when I say I'm feeling disrespected? And I was like, you know what, you're right. Like I would want his support if I felt disrespected. So I told this woman, like, I don't appreciate you hitting on my boyfriend. And our friendship after that it fizzled out. and I didn't have that support from her anymore. And so he was slowly isolating me.
At the same time, also dimming my autonomy. So it was one thing that he wanted me to be well-spoken and intelligent in these situations where we would speak to clients or where we would go to a party with his boss. But as far as the inside of our home, if I were to be doing something that indulged my autonomy, having my own friendships, joining a club that wasn't a charity or something, or, being a part of like a bunco group or things like that, those things were, that was too self-indulgent for me to do. I was supposed to be, living inside my trophy case, really.
And he was my point of emergency because I didn't have anybody else, because he completely isolated me from everybody at uni. Looking back, I've made 0 friends in uni. I've made friends during the day, people I could, go and hang out with and maybe have a drink after class, but I would not see these people. I was completely isolated.
Anytime I wanted to visit my parents, it was 100% no. We weren't allowed to do that at all. Once every couple of months, I guess, not when I say a couple, like twice a year, we would go visit them. He started to limit my phone calls with them.
He would always slag my dad off, and his family would too. And his family wouldn't let my dad come to their house at Christmas. Even though my dad had flown over from the UK to spend Christmas with his grandkids, my ex's mother wouldn't allow him to come. And I'd say to my dad, "Oh, look, I'm really sorry, but they don't want you to come. You're not welcome." And I really should have stood up for them and said, "Well, no," I should have stood up for my dad and said, "Well, if he's not welcome, I'm not coming either."
Anytime that my friends or my family had an event we had to go to, he would start a fight with me on the way to the event. He would make it very clear that he didn't want to go, that it wasn't going to be fun. He didn't like the people there. He didn't want to have to interact with them, and just generally make it so untenable, so miserable to go and spend time with those people that I would just give up. He would become so difficult in an effort to get his way that it just became easier to give him his way.
So he would show up and basically he started making me give up some of those additional activities that I had. So any free time I had to spend with him. And even when I wasn't free, like school hours, he was basically putting himself in the middle of it to say, leave at lunch, come hang out with me kind of deal, right? Or he would, and again, no cell phones were there. So I don't know how and why, but there were times I'd go to the payphone and call him like at my lunch break just to say hi. And then during that conversation, he'd be like, "I'm bored. Come on, let's go hang out."
And I remember at one time we had some friends. We weren't very social outside of our marriage. It was like, we had that routine. And I remember even one of my cousins would get upset because I used to hang out with my cousin a lot before I got married. And I didn't hang out with anybody because I was following this routine. And so one time we went to our neighbors for a party and I was like, "Oh, this is great," an extrovert deep down inside. So I was like, "Oh, I missed the social part." And he wanted to go home. And so I was like, "No, I don't want to go home." And so I stayed. This was in the very beginning of our marriage. So I stayed and I hung out. And then when I got back to the house, he was like in the house mad. He was like sitting there quiet and pissed at me. And I was a little bit buzzed. So I said, "Well, if I would have known you were going to be this way, I wouldn't have married you." Or I said something like that because he said that he expected me to be in bed with him every single night. And that's my obligation as his wife. He said something along those lines. And I was like, "Oh, I do not like that at all." And then he gave me the silent treatment.
And that is it for our Isolation and Control Volume 1 example episode. Thank you to all of our guests from this compilation: Hazel, Dakota, Agatha, Emma Jean, Lady C, Saturday, Paris, Pam, Valentine, and Vida. So search for those names in your podcast player or come to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com and search for it there. And that is it for today's episode. So I hope you have a good night.